guys. Happy Tuesday. Welcome to Dharma Talk. I am Rabia Ilahi. I'm a psychotherapist in Houston, Texas, as well as an energy healer. And uh, today I'm live right now on Instagram and YouTube and Facebook. And so today will be the first time I'm actually going to have the guest come in on Instagram as well. So bear with me on this. I'll do my best to monitor and answer questions. But if I miss a question or if I don't get to you or don't comment, that just means I didn't see it. So be sure to DM me or instant message me. And of course, if you have questions for my guest, that'll be great too, because he'll be able to see all of it. For those of you who don't know, or if it's your first time here, I named this Dharma Talk because Dharma can mean purpose and it can mean doing the right thing. And I wanted to share the things that I've been privileged to learn through education, experience, many other privileges that I've had. And so I just want to present to you guys the best information that I know, as factual as I know, and so you can be informed. And I think when we know the facts, when we can be informed, we make better decisions for ourselves and for others as well. When I originally scheduled this topic, the psychological and legal breakdown, so to speak, of the Amber Heard Johnny Depp trial, it was because so many of you had asked me, and I even had clients coming in saying, are you watching this? Am I borderline or am I, histrionic? And so I decided to talk on this. At that time, the massacre in Uvalde at Robb Elementary School hadn't happened. And so even as I'm talking with you right now, I don't want to be disrespectful to something that has been so horrific. And I don't want it to go unnoticed. But it is traumatic. And instead of canceling, I thought, well, maybe everyone could we could talk about something that isn't so life or death. And the trial and talking about it may be a good escape for us to get a little bit of a break from the trauma that we're seeing and the conversations around gun reform and mental health and all of that. So having said all that, I've been interested in, yes, the psychological aspect of the trial, but I've really also been interested about the legal aspects. Like, what do they mean when they're talking, I don't know, defamation or all of that? But I'm not a legal expert, and that's way above my pay grade, actually. So I have asked a brilliant legal mind to help me, and maybe some of you, understand the legal aspects as I talk about the psychological aspects of this trial. So my very, very, very special guest tonight is John T. Floyd III. He's principal of John T. Floyd Law Firm in Houston. And John is I'm reading my notes because there's a lot to say about him. John is a criminal defense lawyer here in Houston and is board certified in criminal law by the Texas Board of Legal Specialization. So he's got beyond training for this. He's also been rated as a super lawyer, which I did not know, by Thomson Reuters in its prestigious list of top lawyers in Texas. John defends individuals and businesses under investigation or charged with serious criminal activity before the criminal courts in Houston, throughout the state of Texas, and actually even in federal courts nationwide. He's also, and I know this personally, John is also a great humanitarian, and he is a staunch protector of our constitutional rights. So, welcome, John Floyd. I'm gonna, if as you come on, there you are. Okay. And I'm going to add you. Let me see how I do this. Hold on one second.
Thank you for all that kind introduction, Rabia.
You're welcome.
You missed the second paragraph of all the rest of my good stuff, but
I know. I'm sorry. I thought I'd leave that to you. I'll leave that to you. Hold on, let me adjust this here. Okay. I do want. So tell me a little bit, John. First, thank you so much for making time to join me today. With the trial, how much have you been sort of watching it or hearing about it? I know you're working all the time, as am I. So it's not like we get to watch it, but I'm just curious from a legal perspective, what are you seeing?
Well, I had an opportunity to see a lot of it at home. It was on the televisions at home for 24/7, just about recaps, and so I've seen a good chunk of it. I've not paid particular attention to it, other than just the notoriety and the train wreck of this trial. Quite honestly, it's hard as a lawyer to watch a trial, and it's like watching paint dry, right? And
yes. I was surprised that it moves so incredibly slowly.
Well, and this trial did as well. I was constantly reminded, I do criminal defense work where people's lives are at stake, right?
Yeah.
And in those trials, the judges bear down on us to finish a trial. You got 3 days, you got 5 days. Everyone is rushed, and things are shortcutted. And when you have these two celebrities with money on the line, they have been able to consume so much of that, state and county's resources and trial time that, someone who was, down on their luck fighting for their life just wouldn't get. And so in some ways, it's really rubbed me wrong to see these two incredibly, I guess, privileged people, these celebrities, to go on and on about kind of their situation. It's like kind of a poor me fest, right? Yeah. And I don't mean to minimize any of the alleged conduct. Domestic violence is abhorrent, and it is an epidemic, not only in this country, but all over the world, right? Where you have, societies where men are dominating. And so, I was trying not to be jaded as I watched it, but it was just, quite honestly, it was hard to watch at times. Hey, Robbie, I also have not got the Instagram.
Oh, okay, hold on. It says that I'm unable to join you, but or let me try again.
But yeah, it's been very interesting in a lot of ways. Just watching even the expressions on these two celebrities' faces as they, as they go through this. I can't imagine what propelled them not to settle this and keep all this out of public view.
I don't know. That is shocking to me, because it's just not flattering at all.
Either way, either side. I've seen eye rolls, chuckles. It's just, and the conduct both of them have engaged in, whether you believe one side or the other, there's just a bunch that's been aired out that is going to, if their careers weren't already sidelined, they're going to have some PR recovery to do after this, both of them.
Yes. John, did you get the invite yet on Instagram?
No, not yet.
That is so.
But we did get to see Johnny Depp's rings. I didn't realize he wore a ring on every finger.
And big rings, I think, is what they were talking about. Let me try this again. I don't know what's going on.
And we saw
Can you request to join me on the live? Can you go into where it says Rabia has gone live?
Let me see. I'm gonna have to play it on camera just a little bit.
As John is doing that, I wanted to make sure that I touch on um, what Amber Heard was diagnosed with by Johnny Depp's forensic psychologist. And forensic psychologists uh, really learn in a way to present to a court or in some sort of a trial. And whether or not they do therapy, plain talk therapy, I'm not exactly sure. Maybe some do and maybe some don't. Okay, let me see. Yes, did you?
Oh, I don't know. I'm not the one I'm doing, Robin.
Oh, hold on.
I was calling you, but that's not going to work. That's by accident.
Oh, now we're there. Okay. Uh-oh. Okay, sorry guys. This is new. This is new. Let me send you.
I'm trying to do it, but I don't see the button.
Okay.
So I'll put this back.
Are you in my live stream? I think you have to be in my Instagram live stream.
So I'm on your
get the notice.
Oh, I see it. I'm on the view now.
Yeah.
And then how do I join it?
It should say something like you've been invited or joined.
Okay. I just sent a request to join.
Okay.
Made that work. And I got all my kids texting me about how to work Instagram. So that's.
Oh, yes. Oh, wait. I sent accept. Hold on.
So as we do all that, I was also really interested in watching the experts as they testified. Primarily from a lawyer's perspective, it's interesting to see the civil lawyers prove them up as experts and see how the other side kind of handled that. And it's always interesting when you see a trained expert, you'll see how they're trained to turn and talk to the jury. And so all these little tricks you can see, as you become more attuned to them, but they were definitely prepared. And sometimes if I thought the experts actually performed better than the lawyers in the courtroom.
Yes, I think so. But right now, the jury, I think they just had closing arguments. So what do closing arguments do? I'm thinking each side kind of sums up the case, but tell me.
Yeah. So, I mean, the closing arguments are, and the judge reminds, the jurors when they are about to hear the closing arguments. And these are just summations. These are just arguments. They are not.
Sorry.
They are not facts, which is strange, right? They're purely arguments, and the jury is supposed to rely on their own recollection in order to, kind of come up with what the facts of the case are. And so there's arguments, there's summation. And in fact, a lot of judges will instruct jurors almost just to disregard what's being said, other than just for its persuasive impact.
And so when the jury's in deliberation, what exactly are they doing?
So the jury's been given, you would have noticed on, I guess, right before the closing arguments, the jury's been given a set of instructions. I don't know how long. This one was a dozen pages or more of just definitions, how to proceed. And so usually the first thing a jury does when they get back in the jury room is they go over the questionnaire. So they can figure out what the rules are, what they're there for, what they're supposed to be doing. They're supposed to elect a foreman who will kind of guide the process. And then they start deliberating. I wouldn't be surprised on a case like this, since it's been so long, there's been so many witnesses, that a jury, may decide to kind of take a straw poll at the beginning to see if we really want to stay down here any more time. Do we want to spend a couple more days down here talking about this case, or have we made up our minds? Kind of see where the jurors stand. If you have, I think there's 7 in this one. If you have 3 going one way, 4 going the other, try to get a feel for the room, and then they start narrowing down the issues they disagree about. So maybe they agree that there was a defamatory statement, but now they have to find whether or not it was done with malice, right?
Mhm.
And then after they do all that, if they come to a conclusion where they've answered all these questions affirmatively, then they go to what are the damages for that one particular statement, right? And so it's going to be a process. If they start from scratch and start reviewing all these witnesses, they could be out for several days. Sometimes in a long trial like this, a jury can be out for a week. If you remember in some of the high profile cases you've seen before, sometimes juries are gone out for a week or more sometimes, especially when you have celebrities, right? I'm just guessing that you're going to have some, what are they calling them, Deptford wives? Or you might just have some fans that have landed on the panel one way or the other, or people who have become fans
Mhm.
that they've been sitting there. Celebrities get more doubt and more, I guess, leeway for some reason than anyone else.
Mhm.
And so it's going to be very interesting to kind of see where they come down.
And then who is suing for what? Like, who's the plaintiff? Who's the defendant? Like,
Yeah.
we know who has to do what.
Yeah, so Johnny Depp originally sued, and he sued for defamation because of Amber Heard's statements that she made, primarily in that op-ed there was an op-ed that was published in conjunction somehow. I think ACLU helped her write it, and it was published, where she announced that she was a victim of domestic violence, emotional, physical abuse, but also sexual abuse. And so he has filed, a lawsuit saying that those statements are defamatory towards him, and that she's made those statements with bad intent, with
Mhm.
malice. And so he says that as a result of that, he's lost work. I mean, he was supposed to apparently be on the second, what's the Harry Potter? We were just
Oh,
the
yeah.
Dangerous Beast or whatever it is. What is it?
Got it. Fantastic Beasts things.
Yeah, the other J.K. Rowling series, right? And so he believes and I'm sure that's probably accurate. They didn't want him on there because he's now a sexual abuser.
Mhm.
And then she countersued. I think he sued for 50 million. She countersued then and ratcheted it up to 100 million in return, saying that his lawyer had defamed her when he made statements about her in the media, saying that she had made all this up and it was all a lie and that she was this or that. And so, yeah, basically they're in a high dollar swearing match about hurting each other's feelings publicly.
So potentially, sorry, I'm not saying the word right. Can they both win or both lose?
I guess it depends on it. So there are multiple statements that each side has declared are defamatory, right?
Yeah.
And so both sides are suing for damages. So I guess there could foreseeably be a mixed verdict some way, where a jury felt that maybe Depp defamed her in one of the statements and she was damaged, and maybe that he did the same. I would think what could very possibly happen is that a jury could find that one of these sides defamed the other, and then award zero damages. Because it seems like damages are very hard to prove in a case like this. They're very speculative, right? I know Ms. Hurt is saying that she expected her to have a meteoric, how do you call it, a meteoric rise after her fantastic job on Aquaman, and
Yeah.
so she expected that she'd be worth $50-60 million by now, and that's all speculation. So we'll have to see what the jury thinks, right?
Yeah. So okay, to award Johnny Depp, they would have to prove that she intended to defame him or intended to hurt him, because I don't know how we can prove intention.
Well, that's what the jury is, the finder of fact, right? And so they have to find that she made a false, that she knowingly made a false statement, and she made it with malice, meaning that there was intentional, bad intent in her statement to hurt him, knowing that it was false. And so you see these kinds of lawsuits. There's some things, like in Texas, for example, that are considered defamatory, per se, meaning that if you allege that someone's a criminal or felon or something, that is automatically a false statement that is considered to be defamatory. when you have and that's what just any normal person like us, right? A non-celebrity, non-public official.
Mhm.
When you have a celebrity or a public official, because they are in kind of the modern, the forum, they're out in public,
Mhm.
um, there's a higher standard. You actually have to prove that that statement was then made with malice. The same thing if you were to sue a politician for
Mhm.
defamation. It's much more difficult to be a politician or to be a celebrity and
Mhm.
sue for defamation because of this higher standard. You actually have to prove it was done with this malicious intent.
So being public figures, then, I mean, they're just game for
Yeah.
being the target of, I mean, not just from exes who are also public figures, but
Well, look at the last president, right? I mean,
yeah,
he was defaming people all the time, but he was usually defaming other politicians, right? And
yeah.
so it's just kind of fair game. If you put yourself in the public forum, you have to be kind of weary of that, and you have to realize that you have people are going to be talking about you, and you have to develop some kind of a thick skin.
And you said earlier that this is a civil case.
Yeah.
How is civil different from criminal?
So civil is well, the easiest way of kind of summing it up. Civil is about money,
Oh,
and criminal is about your liberty, right? Going to prison or having, your civil rights kind of affected either through being placed on probation or other types of, sanctions against your person.
mhm.
And civil is really just about money. They can't, and that's what's interesting, right? Had the police made an arrest when, I guess Miss Heard or her, the people that were in the apartment with her sister and friends, when they had first called, he would have had a criminal case,
Yeah.
charged against him, right? Which is interesting to me in itself because at least in Texas, and I'm sure the same applies in California, if police observe any indication of domestic abuse, they're required to make an arrest. And so, from kind of the get-go, when I heard that the police did not do that,
Mhm.
it did kind of raise some flags for me because that is something that they have a duty to actually do in domestic violence cases. But that statute is long run, right?
Mhm.
Same thing goes with she could have sued him in tort for just the assault
Mhm.
or personal injury, for the violence that she alleged was committed against her, the physical and sexual abuse. She could have sued him for those torts, for those physical injuries. But then again, that statute of limitations is run as well. So because they really waited, years down the road before they started, I guess, publicly talking about each other, the only thing that's left that the courts can do is a civil case with the defamation claim.
Okay. There's a question here. What's driving the public fascination with this case? I have my thoughts from a psychological perspective, which, here are two people that are known. And then Johnny Depp, I mean, he's been around forever and he's so popular with so many different populations. I think it's like watching this train wreck because what we're hearing is so outrageous, even though I know, having worked with couples that have had domestic violence, they're not saying anything, that many other couples don't say.
Right.
It's just they're public,
Right.
And the slurred speech and the drug use. I think it's just fascinating with the public's interest in reality.
Right.
Reality TV now is not with these unknowns, it's with two celebrities.
Right.
It just kind of, what I'm hoping is that it brings to light the idea that domestic violence isn't just physical,
Mm-hmm.
And it's really the emotional and the mental that can be more damaging in the long run. There's no proof. It's invisible.
Right.
You know, how they were recording each other, I don't know. Everything seemed to be recorded.
Well, a lot of it's because Mr. Depp is trashed, seems like for 50% of his non-acting hours, and he seems to be completely comfortable admitting that and almost kind of chuckling about it, right? I mean, there's pictures of him when he's passed out with ice cream dripping down his leg.
Yeah.
I mean, he's a mess, right? He definitely has drug and alcohol addiction issues that are profound. I think there was enough kind of displayed that she has her own issues with some substances as well. But they also, it seems like they both bring with them, family of origin issues that are that they just didn't work well together, for lack of a better term. It's really sad to see people who have what you would think is everything going for them, who are so I don't know what it is with celebrities and athletes. They've been told how great they are from such a young age. They've never had any boundaries. We run into this with celebrity clients, right?
Yeah.
And they don't ever take responsibility for their actions. They do whatever they want whenever they want, and that leads to these abusive kind of relationships with almost everyone they run into. And also drug and alcohol abuse, because they can just do whatever they please whenever they please.
Yeah, and what I've also noticed is so many celebrities, whether they're athletes, performers, they start at a very young age.
Yeah.
Because to be known takes years of work prior to being known. And if there are trauma issues in the family of origin, and you put on top of that an industry that really is based on, I don't want to say superficial, because I do think talent matters, but it's sort of on image. There's a lot of people making a lot of money from these really not fully developed brains, that get exposed to way too much, and then they have the money to pretty much get whatever they want. And I think it also intimidates people that they won't speak up to them.
Yeah.
Because of celebrity.
Well, you look at this, Depp's rolling around with an entourage, 20, 30 people, and they're all making their living off him. It's not like anyone's going to talk truth to him when he's outside the lanes of appropriate behavior.
Yeah.
And so it's just, it really has been just like watching a train wreck with these two. And it's unfortunate, from a kind of a criminal defense standpoint, we see domestic violence cases, and I've tried domestic violence cases before. And one of the things we always look for when we're defending one of these cases, when it's filed at the criminal level, is for for when people take the stand, they're so upset with the other person, and they're still, obviously these two were still upset with each other.
Yeah.
They start to exaggerate what's in kind of their original set of allegations.
Yeah.
They start piling things on they can't substantiate. And I think we saw a lot of that from both sides, where, you start saying, I could believe the first part of your statement, but you've added so much other stuff now that it's unbelievable. And it's just almost human nature to do that. And we see in almost every trial we have, is that if there is either a victim or a family of a victim, they are so upset by the time they get there that they just can't help but trying to kind of, land that blow that takes down the other side. They start making things up, and when you catch people making things up, it really affects credibility for the rest of their case. And I think both of these people have at times over exaggerated kind of what's going on, and it's really, in some ways, it's affected in a negative way the seriousness of domestic violence.
Yeah.
Because this has become just it's become like a circus, right?
Yeah.
Over a very serious issue that should be taken seriously.
Very serious. And I mean, the addiction alone, I mean, it's actually quite heartbreaking.
Mm-hmm.
And it is quite heartbreaking to see, but maybe I always think about, okay, what could be a good outcome of the trial, of the fascination, of the public nature of it. And you're right, it's drawing more attention to domestic violence. I think it also shows that when we have unhealed trauma, complex trauma, and things starting in family of origin from childhood, it really affects our adult relationships.
Yeah.
And then you throw on top of that, um, you know, Amber Heard was diagnosed as being histrionic and borderline, and the the media industry, the creative world is highly emotional, which is one of the signs of both of those personality disorders.
Mm-hmm.
And the increased emotionality works for them in their career,
Right.
but it works against them often in real life if they don't know how to regulate their emotions inside.
Right.
And then,
And that's why we see so many of these creatives, right, overdosing and dying, right?
yeah,
They take things to an extreme. They have all kinds of issues that are not addressed, and so many of them implode with inappropriate behavior, or they end up overdosing and dying.
yeah, yeah. I think that's and I do remember when Michael Jackson died, people were saying, well, why wasn't anyone stopping him?
Mm-hmm.
And what I know just from my own experience working in mental health, if someone doesn't want to change or be helped, there's really nothing you can do.
Right.
Same with addiction. There has to be some motive, some desire to make things better.
Right.
And I just think the pressure is tremendous. Um,
But at least now we know that Johnny Depp likes to do a lot of drugs and drink
yeah,
and hang out with Marilyn Manson.
yeah.
It's kind of frightening to me. Changed my my perception altogether.
Are you not going to let your kids see his next movie?
It's I guess if there's a movie and it's worth seeing, I've not been convinced. I hate to say it, one way or the other on the case. I hope that both of them will find a way to kind of get out of this hole that they've dug themselves into.
Yeah.
Let this go and focus on their art. That community in particular, your artists, your musicians, they are very forgiving about all these things.
Yeah.
And if they could just make some amends and kind of get their stuff straight, I think people would welcome them back into. They've not done anything that's going to prevent them from having a comeback, right?
Yeah. Well, like you said, it's not criminal.
Yeah.
I not that always prevents artists from coming back.
Mm-hmm.
I think it does. What is the question for me here? Okay. So as a professional, Lily's asking, as a professional, what were you looking at when Amber or Johnny took the stand? Do you scan their body language? What lens are you using looking at this trial? So honestly, Lily, I haven't watched a lot of it, but I started to because people were asking me about it. And what I look for as a mental health professional is I am looking at body language. I am looking at facial expressions, especially when, like in the background, if I can see, when they flash to Amber Heard sitting at the, her table, with her team, or Johnny Depp. And so I'm looking at how they're sitting, whether or not they're smiling, are they looking up or looking down? And I also use what I know of couples, which is, and also how the brain works, is when we are fighting, even years later, our mind remembers things much differently than they may have happened in real time.
Right.
And so both of them, I mean, they're performers. And so I take that into account. And they both, I think, have some kind of personality disorder. It's hard to be out there in the public like that without having some, at least, narcissistic traits, and with histrionic and borderline as well, it's a lot about being the center of attention. And look at me. And there is a lot of overly dramatic behavior. And it's sort of, love is well, it's my 20s, right? So I don't know. I think it can describe a lot of people in their 20s. But, there's just a high level of jealousy and emotionality and drama. And I hate you one minute, but then I love you. I can't live without you. And add on top of that, substance abuse and access to really anything they want. It's just, I felt sorrier, quite honestly, for them, because I think that it's really shitty. But honestly, after some of the mass shootings, it was really hard for me to be as moved.
Right.
It
doesn't have nearly the gravity of what is going on in the rest of the world. And what's interesting, back to Lily's question, I kept catching myself when I would see one of them on the stand, and wow, they seem so believable. Think, oh, these people, they are trained. This is what they do for a living. And I mean, I've seen Johnny Depp perform in roles before where, you believe he's somebody else, and her as well. I mean, they're trained professionals about fooling people into believing what they're saying and becoming other people. And so it made it very difficult for me to, judge who was telling the truth. So now you're really, as far as what's coming out of their mouth, you're really left with evidence that corroborates one side or the other.
Yeah.
Trying to find things that would support one view or the other. And it's very difficult in a case where so much time has gone by.
Mm-hmm.
There's so little uncontested physical evidence. I mean, we have allegations that that Johnny, punched her in the nose one day and she had a broken nose, and the next day there's pictures of her, out at a social function getting, thousands of pictures taken of her with none of them showing any bruises, and then a couple of days later she shows up in at a different event and she has bruises, right? Or when she's trying to, when she's wanting to show the bruises. And so whether that's makeup or something else, it really does confuse things for people. All right.
Yeah, I agree. I do think it is difficult for me to hear either of them on the stand without like, oh, really? How much of, come on. Or I'm not buying your performance here.
Yeah.
What I have admired, honestly, are the lawyers. The lawyers, especially, I can't remember her name, the female lawyer for Johnny Depp. But the gamesmanship, the strategic thinking that the attorneys use, I think that just from watching you guys, and I'm saying you, John, because you're an attorney, but how you frame, Camille Vasquez, that's right. how you frame
Lily's on the
what
ball.
you're asking, and then also what you focus on, right? Because you're trying to win
Right.
for your person. So it's just, to me, strategically,
Right.
they were in a way kind of genius.
Yeah. You know, I guess from a criminal defense lawyer's perspective, since we try a lot more cases, civil lawyers sometimes will go their whole career and not try a case.
Okay.
They don't have the same amount, generally speaking, the same kind of courtroom experience. They're not as comfortable in their own skin being in the courtroom. I felt watching them, I could see the strategy, but to see lawyers reading from their notes, it was shocking to me. These people are getting paid like one. I guess Miss Heard's lawyers put in a amount of $7 million for legal fees
Wow.
for this case, because that's part of the damages later on. And I'm sitting there thinking, you know, wow, these guys are getting paid this much money. They should know these cases, you know, backwards and forwards, and they're having to read from their notes, their closing arguments. I was really less than impressed at that point, just that kind of thing. But that's civil work. It's different than what we do.
You know,
I would put up criminal defense lawyers and prosecutors who are in the courtroom all the time up against these lawyers almost any day if they knew the subject matter.
Because you bring up a good point. When I saw them reading, I thought, okay, I must be wrong, like all the TV shows, right? That the lawyer is pacing back and forth and speaking, you know, so beautifully and all of that to the jury, not looking at any notes. And so I thought maybe that's just TV.
Yeah.
But what you're saying is that in the criminal defense attorneys or in criminal trials, the attorneys aren't reading verbatim.
Well, not the good ones.
Oh.
I mean, and I'm sure there are civil lawyers who would not fall into that. It's once you start reading from a script and I understand they're probably very nervous. They've got this trial that's being broadcast all over the world. But you know, you didn't see that like in the O.J. Simpson trial, right? You didn't see those guys reading from their notes. Those guys got in there and were telling you from their heart what they felt about their case, and from a persuasive standpoint, that just means something, right? It seems like even if you've memorized it from paper and you planned what you're going to say, I just found it very interesting. You know, that they were still relying on, and to the point that they're reading out, you know, cases and sites through in their arguments. So it's just a whole different kind of ball game over there. But it's also something I found very interesting before we move on to something else was the groupies, right?
Oh, right.
I mean, who goes and stands outside of a courtroom dressed like, you know, Captain Jack Sparrow? I mean, it's just, and you saw the same thing like when Michael Jackson was on trial. You know, people, or R. Kelly, you have fans show up and they stand out there all day long, hoping that they'll connect with their celebrity idol, right?
Yeah.
In fact, that's how R. Kelly allegedly found some of his victims. Was, you know, during trial for, you know, committing, you know, sexual assault on minors or child pornography, whatever it was, he was able to actually attract other children who were out there watching his trial. And so it's very interesting, the drive that the public has. I mean, who would watch this case if it wasn't for Johnny Depp and Miss Heard, right?
I think they would watch. They wouldn't watch if it were Amber Heard with someone else, but I think they would watch Johnny Depp with anybody. But I don't know, you guys that are on right now, I'd love to know what you think about that, or am I totally off?
Well, it had everything, right? It's got sex, drugs, rock and roll. I mean, I didn't know Johnny Depp has like a rock band. You know, it gets creepier and creepier. You know, but it has all the elements, right? You got celebrity, you have allegations of sex. There's lots of drugs. There's lots of just strange behavior. There's parties. I mean, he's on his own island. I mean, it's just all there. It's like made for TV, right?
Yeah. So I want to ask anyone who's interested, what has been your fascination, if any, uh, about this trial? I will say that when I have clients coming in asking or wondering that are they borderline or histrionic, no, they usually are not. Oh, you wouldn't watch her without anyone else? Yes, yeah. Lily saying it's really fascinating because I wouldn't watch her with anyone else. Yes, there's this thing of getting a peek behind the curtain
Yeah.
of celebrity, so I think that's right. But with personality disorders, uh, people with personality disorders don't just come in for therapy because they normally don't think there's anything wrong with them. And by the time we see them, they're coming in more for like depression or anxiety or relationship issues, not for being borderline or narcissistic or histrionic, or antisocial.
Right.
They're just not going to come seek help for things like that unless they have another issue going on that affects their lives,
Right.
or that they think affects their lives, and they come in for help. So
and while we're just kind of on a more serious note of all this, I would really hope that people who have watched this maybe have learned some lessons in their own lives. What we really need to take domestic violence seriously.
Yeah.
This couple should have probably had counseling before they were married,
Yeah.
immediately after they were married. Counseling can really perform some miracles. I've seen clients who have gone through anger management and the domestic violence programs that are offered, and really work on their relationships and turn these things around.
Yeah,
But you can't do it if everyone's trying to hide it and you got yes men around you.
Yeah.
You really need some people. You need to start surrounding yourself with people who will be honest with you.
Yeah.
We've had some incidents lately in our Houston community, where domestic violence has gone unchecked, and men have acted out with violence and killed their spouses, killed their families.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's not to make light of this circus, with the exclusion of the reality that this goes on, because it does. And in most cases, it is something that needs to be addressed sooner rather than later. And
Yeah.
letting this stuff spiral out of control, and blaming the other person. Men are typically the ones who are, I guess, able to commit the most violence in a relationship. But many times there is this kind of two-way street that leads up to that point. And a lot of these things need to be addressed and taken seriously early on before they get out of control and someone gets hurt. And
Yeah.
so, I'm hoping that people who are watching this and able to kind of see the entertaining side of it will take seriously reaching out if they're in these kind of relationships, or if they have friends or families that are in these kinds of relationships. Because I've seen far too often it get way out of hand and people get hurt or people get killed.
Yes, I think, okay, there's a comment here from Wendy. I think this whole affair has given us a rare peek behind the chiffon curtain. Yes, lifestyles of the rich and famous, and has made me so happy that I didn't sign that contract with MGM all those years ago. That's funny. But seriously, I'm glad I'm not either of them. Yeah, I agree, Wendy. I think, but I may not have known you if you may not be on here if you had signed that contract with MGM. I don't know.
You never know. Wendy's resourceful.
Yeah, so we just have a few minutes left. I thought if anyone has any questions or comments for either John or me, you can comment. If you're on, I think on Facebook, I can read your comment, but on YouTube, I can't. And then, of course, on Instagram, John and I can both see any kinds of questions.
And while we're kind of waiting on that, Robbie, I wanted to just kind of mirror something you said at the beginning. What's going on in this state, in Uvalde and Buffalo. I mean, we've had school shootings in Santa Fe, Texas. We had the church shooting a couple of years ago. Now we have this. Just awful. It's gut wrenching.
Yeah.
We've not yet to see how bad it really is.
Yeah.
This morning I was hearing some of the pressers coming out about, these children in there trying to call out. We have got to do something. And a lot of that is there's a mental health component to all of that. Obviously, a lot of these people are disturbed and they have just unlimited and unrestricted access to guns.
Yeah.
And I think, if that sentiment rings true to anyone out there, I would strongly urge people to start reaching out to their elected officials, especially those on the right side, on the Republican side, who are, being propped up by the NRA, and just let them know that you're not okay with this anymore.
Yes.
That's
yeah.
just my 2 cents.
And I did actually post on my Facebook the other day that it's such there's so many issues playing out in the US.
Yeah.
Some are long-term fixes, like mental health, like racism and the violence that is really has taken over, it seems like, in the US. So those are like long-term systemic things we need to work on, as well as education. But in the immediate thing could be some sort of restriction, on weapons, that because we have all of these systemic issues, weapons only make it worse.
Right.
They don't solve anything. I don't think majority of them are actually used in self-defense. And I agree. I think if we don't get out there and vote, it's not going to happen.
Right. And, then we have, the Buffalo shooting with this guy was spouting off all this
very racist
rhetoric that's being normalized in this country. I always say this, prior to Barack Obama being elected, that side of the country was embarrassed, ashamed to say these things out loud. But once we had a black man elected as president who was intelligent and capable of doing the job, that third of the country who is they appear to be hardcore vested in this alternative reality of trying to keep the nation, where it was before the civil rights era.
Yeah.
They just went nuts.
Yeah.
And, also figuring out a way to start a dialogue with some of those folks, because, we're in really bad place in this country right now.
Yes.
Between, the racism, the violence, what we're seeing in this Johnny Depp trial, in some ways, all this, it's just more violence, right? It's more, there's violence. There's people who are just privileged to be who they are, and they want to maintain that privilege. And so, there's just a lot of different things we have to keep our eyes on. Where if we're not careful, it could become overwhelming, right?
Yeah. Well, and the fun side, I guess, of this trial, it probably is a break from the seriousness of the issues we're hearing on the news,
Right.
Even though the news has been fascinated with this trial.
Yeah.
So, okay, we are just about out of time. John, how can people reach you? And you're just doing criminal defense, true? Or is that correct?
Yeah. My practice is exclusively criminal defense. I'm board certified in criminal law. If you want to reach me, I think I see there. You can find me at my website. It's www.johntfloyd.com. Yeah, you can find me easily. You just Google my name, you can find my website.
Great. And I think you do a lot with civil liberties as well.
Yeah, so as we speak, I am the chairman and the president of our local CARE chapter, which is the nation's largest Muslim civil rights organization. And then that's my daytime job is the criminal work. Kind of one of my passion points is the civil rights work, and so that's what I do, volunteer and pro bono, and have done hundreds of cases regarding civil rights that people have been attacked in the Muslim community. So yeah, that's good stuff.
Yeah, yeah, it is. So thank you very much, John. And I want to say to anyone watching, whether you're watching it live or later, that you really are powerful. You have those of us that are lucky to have any kind of privilege to use what we have to help other people, I think is it's imperative, actually, especially right now.
Right.
And I also want you to know that none of us does this whole thing alone.
Mm-hmm.
That uh, we really are a family, as Pollyanna as that sounds. I don't mean it that way, but I think we all want the same things, basically, which is life, liberty, safety, our kids safe,
Right.
and all of that stuff. But and if you do get involved, whether it's volunteering with domestic violence, whether it's voting, know that what you do really matters, and that you actually really, really matter.
Right.
And to know that you have the power to do something. So, John, thank you very much.
Thank you, Rabia.
Time out. And I will see you guys next time.